Welcome to Cars on Call. I am automotive journalist Steve Schutz, and I'm here along with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran. We are going to be joined by Adams Hudson momentarily. He's elsewhere, but trauma surgeon
A little
Stephan
bit
Moran.
late. Imagine that.
That's what happens when you retire. So
Yeah.
anyway, this is the day of the eclipse. We have no eclipse automotive news. We're not going to talk about the Mitsubishi, but we do have, we're the only podcast with a trauma surgeon that's done many operations on car crash victims, as well as research on car safety. Adams Hudson joins us soon. He's an automotive collector, connoisseur, and consultant. And we're going to start. We got a lot to talk about. And we're going to start with a little bit of Q1 sales. I'm going to try to make that more interesting than just going through numbers, which I won't do. And then we're going to talk about, I actually saw something in Car Magazine I'm going to say very quickly. Automotive safety. After that, car spotting. Adams has a car that's pretty interesting to see. He's going to talk about, there's a rant. We're going to do a rant by, Adams is doing a rant today. I think, right, Stefan? Isn't
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
It could be you do the agenda, dude.
I
did
did a rant last time, so Stefan or Adams is going to do it this time.
There he is.
We're gonna start ranting
time zone rant.
there.
Time zone rant.
We're gonna start ranting here or there, and I like it. I got some feelings off my chest last week. I'm going to talk Mansory. Most people don't know what Mansory is. You should. If you have exquisite taste, you're not going to like Mansory.
Bad taste.
You're not going to like Mansory. No. But you should know about it. And then we're going to do a collector car. So without further ado, let me go through the sales data. And again, I'm not going to make it a numbers thing, but this new car sales are softening. And despite the fact that they were up a little bit, if you look at the seasonally adjusted sales rate, what they call the SAR, it went from just a little over 15 million to 15.4 million. That's the rate for the first quarter. So in other words, if you had the same rate of sales for the next 3 quarters, you'd make 15.4 million sales, which is pretty good. But there's some bad news, and I'm going to go through the bad news quickly, and you guys can chime in. Ford is flooded with F-150s, and they are bringing back the dreaded stair step. Those are when you give money to your dealers, what's it called? Incentives. So this is dreaded because what happens is it's stair steps. So if you're a dealer, and everybody should know about this because this is something that manufacturers use to push the metal when they're not able to sell cars normally. And it says, let's say you're a dealer and you sell 25 cars in a month, of an F-150, you sell 25 in a month. Ford will say, okay, you get X number of dollars per vehicle for the first 15. And then if you make it to 20, you get a little bit more. If you get to 25, which is your normal, you get the normal number. And then if you get to 30 or 35, you get even more. So it pays dealers to dump vehicles for a loss as long as at the end of the month they make it up. And what happens is you end up flooding the market with new cars that were sold cheap. And then it decreases the value of these cars later. It decreases resale value. So dealers hate them. Customers don't even know they're there. And anybody who resells cars later hates them too.
So how do you classify the Porsche GT3 Taycan incentive? Talk about depreciation. Yeah. So listeners, if you haven't been listening to earlier shows, if you want to get a GT3, you're going to have to buy a couple Taycans, which appreciate by what was it, Adams? 80%?
In about 5 years, right at 80%, and the jury's still out on it.
Yeah.
So Ford does not have anything like a GT3, which Porsche has, regrettably. So inventory has been increasing. So 2 years ago there was very little inventory. Now there's tons of inventory. Inventory is up about 200% over the last 2.5 years. Large pickups are piling up. There's a picture of a Ram. That's the Ram Tungsten, which is supposedly better than Platinum. That's the idea. Pickup trucks, big ones, are filling up. Are filling up the lots. They are moving these because people are not buying them. Bronco sales are down 26%. Electric vehicles, if you go down to that's the Shelby version of the Mach-E, the
God
Mustang
forbid.
Mach-E.
I think that's a Photoshop tragedy.
No,
is
it
what
was
that is.
shown at SEMA.
Oh, jeez.
There is a
All right,
thing.
all right, let's move to the next slide, please.
Yeah,
there's
Stefan, can I
Listeners,
plug that very
listeners,
long?
this is a Mustang Mach-E in white with some kind of hood scoop, supposedly, though there's no engine in the front. And it's got
That's a
blue
luggage
stripes on it.
aeration scoop.
A luggage aeration scoop. Oh, geez. I do like the wheels, though. There's
It's
six
like a Ford
spoke.
GT. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like the wheels too.
That is Wimbledon white.
Mm.
Anyway, so it must be legit. There were some winners. I'll go through again. I don't want to spend too much time on this. Maverick sales, Ford Maverick sales up 82%. Mazda around 12%. Hyundai and Genesis both up. I'm going to say, go back to the Mazda for a second. Mazda, I think, is very quietly decided they want to be the Japanese Audi. They got Audi type colors. They got nice interiors. And there's the CX-90. Audi Q3 is up. I didn't have a picture of that. Who cares? No one cares. But if you go down to the Hyundai Santa Fe is up big. All of Hyundais are up.
Can I
and
comment on the
Genesis-
Mazda briefly as we were looking
Yeah.
at that? That's a very, very enlightened comment that they wanted to be the Japanese Audi. I'm not kidding you guys. I mean, we're all equally car aware, maybe some a little bit more than others on the newer stuff. Almost every time a newer SUV turns my head, it's a Mazda.
Yeah. they've done a
Or
good job.
Genesis for me. Either one.
Yeah.
The Genesis
Yeah, I'd say
and the
both.
Mazda's turn my like, what is it? Oh, that's that. There's enough styling cues to differentiate them from every other boxy SUV crossover.
Yeah, they
While
kind of both refuse to be boring.
while Mazda is taken after Audi styling, Genesis is taken after Bentley styling.
There you go.
Yeah.
The GTI is doing fantastic. It is up big. Let me see the number. The GTI is up 156%.
Wow.
The Golf R is up 125%. So those are the winners. But here's the bottom line. Increase in interest rates and prices are putting pressure on sales. Sales are starting to drop, especially expensive vehicles, especially full-size pickup trucks, which we've talked about are overpriced anyway. And this is becoming more, we're going to see more softening over the rest of the year. I don't want to talk too much more about it, but as a launching pad for discussion, Ford has delayed all BEVs, most notably their 3-row crossover that was supposed to come out next year like an Explorer, but BEV. They're all being postponed by at least 2 years, and they're going for hybrids. So there you go.
That's a big wrap up. And I tell you that the BEV comment is going to make it to my rant today. So there will be a little linkage or what we call in the business a segue. So there could be a connection there.
I had a feeling, I thought if Adams is going to rant, he's going to rant about how we need a Shelby Mach-E.
There'll be one in this empty space soon. Stefan, get ready.
Oh,
Grab her orange.
I thought you were one for what was it? The Safari version, like what they call that? Oh God, awful. All right, next subject. What is it? I don't want to.
Anyway, yeah, I guess there's not much to talk about sales, but it is interesting to throw that out there.
But we talk about it when we drive by car dealers. We're always looking at what's on the lot because that lets you know what sales are like. And but I'll think about it. The COVID stimulus money, people have burnt that up. Now what they overspent, they're paying their bills and like, new car. Now to find the money for that post-COVID, all that, I can see why, the manufacturers jacked their output up to meet the demand, but now we're reapproaching back to a normal baseline sales from a high peak. And we're seeing that in the classic cars as well in the auctions. I'm seeing more and more, I only follow Cobras on the auction sites religiously, so I can figure out what their prices are. And I know that, and I know those cars, and a lot of them aren't making bid, and they're going for a lot less money than they did 3 months ago, 6 months, and especially 18 months ago.
Yep. And Steve, I think that the new car trend, and exactly like Steph's saying, it relates to the collector car trends. It's just spending habits. And, no matter what the government mandate is out there, you cannot mandate a change in customer spending habits. And I think that'll relate to the rant as well as, what we're talking about, if those of us who follow BAT, bring a trailer, you'll see that they do alumni now. You'll see a car that had previously been on there in whatever time period. And if it's a super high number, you can almost guarantee it was somewhere between, around February of 21 and late 22. And there's a lot of peak cars that sold for 10, 15, 20, or even 30% more in the peak. And that's just air. It's just air. And this is a short time for that air to deflate, but it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. It's going to be interesting to follow. This is going to be a very interesting year. I do think we see drops all over the place. Before we move to car spotting, I saw something in Car Magazine that I'm going to mention. I'm going to drop this on you guys because you guys are not aware of what I'm going to talk about. But show a picture. I just sent a picture of the Mustang, the brand new 2024 Mustang, and then the Dark Horse. And Car Magazine, which I love, we all love that magazine, said a couple things about the new Mustang. They said, number one, Ford did a really good job. They said they could have just put it in the microwave for 30 seconds. But they put a lot of effort in.
That's a great comment. That is you know, I read that, but I guess, you know, I tend to skim read when I'm reading Car Magazine because that's like right before I go to bed, I'll just skim through. But that is a fabulous. That sounds like something that Anthony F.F. French Constant would have said.
Yeah, well, they said something else, Stefan. We'll see what you see if you guys like this. There is the GT version. If you scroll down, it's the Dark Horse. Just keep scrolling. Now you scroll up. All right. Okay. Now hold it there. They said the Dark Horse is a Mustang GT with mascara. now scroll up and then scroll down. It is. It's got mascara. They blacked out underneath the eyes.
Yes. Yeah. It does.
I see that.
Thank goodness they forgave the lash extension. Good.
All right. I know I'm speaking for a lot of people. I cannot unsee that being a mascara. Every time I see a Dark Horse, I'll be like, oh crap, there's the mascara. All right, car spotting.
Car spotting. This was an interesting one. Steve had sent this earlier in the week. And back in the day, we all certainly remember the McLaren F1, and that was McLaren's pretty much independent approach to making a supercar, and a supercar now that is valued, you know, then it was a staggering sum at $1.2 million or whatever Gordon Murray had set for it. And he'd set the limitation of exactly how many he was going to build, and he held true to that. And now that, say, pick a number, 15, 20, $25 million car. Well, Mercedes was honored to have been included in some of the componentry of that car, and decided, hey, well, let's bring in McLaren and AMG and Mercedes together to build the Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren. And Steph, I don't know if you have a photo of that lovely.
I'm trying to see. I don't remember seeing the picture, Adams.
There was a Steve, maybe. Okay, maybe pulling it up. But over a too long of a gestation period, and that's really what this kind of that relates to its delay being shown here, because the world also waited in anticipation of this car. When is it going to come out? When is it going to come out? It had been rumored, it had been talked about, and heavily engineered and over-engineered. And thus was the death of that in a way, like the Lexus LFA, the second gen. There you go, the second gen Acura NSX spent way too long in the incubator. It was over discussed and over engineered and over changed. And sadly, this car, though its front end is quite the elongated proboscis, attempting to mimic the then current F1 technology look that Mercedes was after. Like, you know, let's hint at our F1 program, and then from the side, let's hint at the 300 SLR, and then let's hint at our Grand Prix victories with the launch color. And everything was trying to blend together. The designers couldn't get out of their own way. And so this car comes out about 3 years too late. And it's just not a very attractive car. And I know I spent a lot of time talking about styling, but you know, that is the immediate attractant. This market is a lot ruled by men, although there's some very, very car savvy, car aware females out there. I think the initial thing people notice is, what does it look like? And this particular car does not have the great look, although it has 611 horsepower front mid-engine design. And Mercedes had big hopes for this car. They thought it's going to hit the market and everybody's going to want one just like the F1. Thus was not the case. I believe they sold somewhere, they thought they would sell about 500 or so annually. This car came out, by the way, that car was a 2008 or so. They sold, I think, a total of about 2,100 cars, and what they had hoped that they would do about 5,000 or 6,000 units, and then they halted production. But overall, the car is still a very, very good performer. Its prices are depressed if you consider that price level to be something within your strike range. But there you go. There's a car with too many minds, too many designers, and too much delay with too many accountants weighing in. What do you guys think?
Well, you forgot to credit Jimmy Durante, the nose, as one of the designers on this. Oh, I know. Our
He's
older
a
listener.
Mercedes M away
Yeah.
from being McLaren.
That thing was so disproportionate. And what it always looked like to me was literally somebody saw it on the screen and grabbed the cursor and just stretched the front end by 3 feet. Because it looks like you could literally climb in front of the engine to work and stand inside of this hood like an old 60s Cadillac and work on the motor. Or an old F-150. You could literally stand inside of it. And yeah, they've tried to bring, it's just a mishmash Frankenstein of a Mercedes. It just, ugh. Yeah, it never appealed to me. It was the idea. I was so excited what they were going to do with this car. And when it finally came out, I was like, ugh, you know?
Yeah, I completely agree. Frankenstein's a very good description. I saw the first concept of this was in 2000, and it was beautiful. It looked a lot like what it came out, but it had a much shorter hood, very good proportions. So you could tell the concept, one guy had done it. And then by the time the committee was done with
Yes.
it, it was this Frankenstein. I just think it's terrible. By the way, Adams, you talked a few episodes ago about collectability relating to rarity. Well, this is rare. Exterior design, no. Interior design, no. Racing credibility, no. So all it's got is rarity, and it's rare because people didn't want to buy it because it was ugly.
Yep. As they say, rare for a reason.
Yeah.
And still phenomenally complicated, and lest we forget, in all these designs that are mashed on top of each other, which is pretty much what makes a Frankenstein, we fail to even mention the front exit exhaust. I mean, it's like everybody had their thing they were going to hold on to. Somebody got the vent, somebody got the exhaust, somebody got the F1 nose, somebody got the fold up doors. Everybody got one thing, and it just did not gel.
All right, I'm going to say something controversial that we have to move on to Stephan and safety, but this is, it was offensive when it came out. Now it's not so bad. I think it's gone from offensive to just kind of ugly. That's pretty good. I think it's going to age well. I think it's going to be okay over time.
I'll hold you to that.
I hate to agree with you early. I'll tell you though, I had a similar thing about when the Testarossa came out. I thought, what sort of 12-cylinder cheese grater is that? 10, 15 years later, I started liking them.
I loved it when it came out. I thought it was cool. I know it was wide, but I did like it.
Yeah, there's the Blanca is a country song where he's talking about when am I going to get over get over this love of my life, and it's going to take dying to do it. It may take dying for me to finally like the Testarossa. I bet they have a lot in hell. All right, on to safety.
All right. Sorry if I'm a little congested here from all the pollen in the air. Listen, so today's not a rant, but today we actually have some good news in the automotive industry in terms of fatality rates on our highways. So NHTSA just released the 2023 fatality early estimates. What they do is they start looking at the data, and then they'll apply some estimation statistics to the data that they have and kind of predict where they're going to be. And they usually nail these. And then it'll come out as in what's called the FARS data, where they'll actually give you the actual data. But they're looking at, so bottom line, 2023, we drove more miles than in 2022, but we actually had lower fatality rates. So I hate to say that, but only 40,990 people died on our roadways. Only. I mean, that still is a lot of people that shouldn't be dying on our roadways, but it's a 3.6 decrease from the 42,514 in 2022. But let's kind of keep things in perspective where we are. I mean, we like to focus on our, it's easy to focus on motor vehicle fatalities because they are graphic. We all have probably experienced or been in a car wreck. It's something that we know. And also, you don't have to go out and drive your car. Well, you know, if you're in a city, you can walk, but most of us do have to drive. But we do a lot of joy riding in this country. America was built around the Ford model, you know, the Ford, and we're just a very mobile country. But 695,000 people die a year from heart disease. Smoking kills 480,000. And then, like us three gray-haired old men on here who are boomers who grew up in the backseat of parents smoking, 41,000 people die from secondhand smoke exposure. So think about it. We have as much secondhand smoke exposure deaths as we do as fatalities on our highways. Just have to think about it. Well, is 42,000 people dying on our roads? Is that a lot of people? Well, the Vietnam War only killed 58,200. But even sadder than our motor vehicle statistics, 46,000 Americans die a year from suicide. So so I like to kind of keep all these numbers, but these are numerators. These are numbers. I haven't given you any denominators yet. So what's important is when you have a number, the number can be shocking, but you got to look at it. Is this a never ever event or is this a frequent event? So when you add a denominator, then we start talking about rates, or what we actually call our metrics. Metrics, so you have a number, a top number and a bottom number. So when we want to talk about fatality rates on our highways, we need a denominator, and that denominator that is used in publications and reporting is death or fatality per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. Okay, so that's fatalities over MVT, the million motor vehicle miles traveled. So it was 1.33 in 2022, and it was 1.26 in 2023. Well, like, I don't know, 1.33, 1.26. Well, then we do another thing and we get a percentage. Well, that's where the 3.6% decrease comes in. So it's actually good that now you have to ask the question. So now we have fewer, our fatality rate has gone down, but I also told you that we drove more miles. So how many more miles did we drive in 2023? 67.5 billion more miles on our roadways. Well, that was only a 2.6% increase over 2022. So what happened here? We drove more miles, but our death rate went down, which is a good thing. So that's a good thing to see the trend in those two directions. Well, you have to ask yourself, why were our fatality rates so high? Well, COVID. Okay, COVID, we saw a huge decrease in the miles traveled, but we saw an increase in the fatality rate. Why? Well, think about it. One of the easiest way to answer that question is the cannonball run, which is where people try to set a speed record across the country, was set during COVID. All-time record was set. Well, because when people got on the road during COVID, it was like walking through the airport. There was nobody else on the roads. There were no cops on the roads. There were no state troopers on the road. So what are you naturally going to do if you're driving on the interstate all by yourself and you see 5 miles of straight ahead roadway? You're probably going to go a little faster.
Possibly, yeah.
Possibly. You're kind of bored because there's nobody else in the interstate. You're going to start fooling around with the radio, changing your Spotify. You're going to read your email. So your distraction goes up. So all these things, what they found basically was risk-taking behavior behind the wheel markedly increased during COVID, which led to this marked increased fatality rate, while at the same time we saw a marked decrease in miles traveled. So once again, kind of like our car sales, we're returning back to a norm here. So we're coming back to baseline, and we all found our inner teenager during the COVID years driving around, but we're coming back to the norm. And this is, I think, the world in general, society living now in a post-COVID world, we're returning back to a normality. So it'll be interesting to see how this rate actually pans out. And we should be able to look at the graphs of fatality rate over the years, and we're going to see this blip like we did in the COVID years. If you take out the COVID, it's just going to look like normal safety miles and fatality rates. So this more
Stephan,
food for thought to think about.
Three things you bring up there, always something to ponder. And the first is, I would have thought, just intuitively, that fewer people on the highways and byways would have led to a lower fatality rate per million miles driven.
One
other
would
than what you
think.
mentioned, the crazies, yeah.
Yes.
And the second thing is, as people's behavior got worse during COVID, now that we're sort of back in terms of other traffic on the road, did our habits and behaviors retreat? In other words, are we going to self-correct on that? And I guess that remains to be seen. And then the third thing that didn't come out that I thought you were going to mention is vehicle safety. Is vehicle safety possibly bringing this ratio down to a little bit better number with 15 airbags and lane warnings and all the other?
When you think about it, since the advent of the airbag, and now we've got some active driver features, side airbags, emergency active braking, we're kind of like, in my mind, we are at peak safety. And I've mentioned on the show, it's been a long time ago, if we really want to effect fewer deaths on our roadways, we can't keep adding more pads to the uniform. There comes a point in time where we got to take the face mask off the helmet and talk about the behavior of the people, the athletes that are on the field in a football game. You take the face mask off, there will be no concussions out there because they'll quit using their head as a weapon. When we add safety features, we taunt the safety of our vehicles. People now inherently think they're safer. I mean, remember back in the 60s, there was nearly a death in automotive racing nearly every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We were losing F1 drivers all the time. Look at the guys driving NASCAR, how they drive and use their cars as a weapon when they get pissed off at the other guy, slam them into the wall, spin them out. It's because they know they're not going to die. So we see that. I think there's that same transition to our everyday vehicles, that we feel this false sense of safety, that we have all this, that we're not the attentive driver that we should be. I mean, if you were doing 70 miles an hour, if I was in my Mazda Miata going down the interstate, let me tell you what, I don't like to take that thing on the interstate because I feel exposed. Mm-hmm. But we lose that. You're driving around an F-250, you're driving around a Suburban XL, Escalade, you're telling everybody, you don't give a shit about anybody out there. You just mind your own business because you're driving a freaking tank. So I think the cars have become so safe that our drivers our driving skills in this country just turned to shit. I mean, overall,
I think so too.
I think it's a lot of it, Stephan. But I would also add that everyone's not wearing the same uniform.
Yes, that's correct.
Average age of a car in the United States is 12 years old.
Yep.
So that means that there's a lot of 20 and 30-year-old cars out there. And like your point about the Miata, there's a lot of cars that are not safe. I mean, yeah, if you're in an Escalade, a new Escalade, you're really, really safe. And we've all seen how many times a day, I mean, almost daily, I'll see a 30-year-old Accord or Camry because the damn thing won't ever break down.
Now, big Altima energy. Yeah, big Alta energy.
The Altimas, yeah.
So,
Altimas.
yeah, I agree with you. So, all those factors combine, and, but you can't legislate driver behavior, and it's hard to prosecute driver behavior in, even with troopers on the roads and things. But hopefully I think that's, in my mind, I don't think we'll ever change the way that Americans feel about their freedom and the car. And the car is what built this country. I mean, allowing us to travel this great nation. And so a lot to be said for that. But as we get into autonomous driving, I think that's when we will truly see fatality rates go down, because you're taking the driver out of the picture.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So,
Mhm.
all right, we got to move.
right.
But on to I don't know how you segue from highway deaths to what you're going to talk about, but I'm glad there's a little bit of good news, by the way, Stefan. But anyway, Adams, what's your rant? I had a rant. I want to do this. I can't wait for Stefan's, by the way, but I wanted to have us just say something that pisses us off, and we want to talk about it. I did it on how GM last week, or last week, how GM doesn't appreciate their big money making large SUVs. What's your rant, Adams?
Mine relates to what we've been talking about a bit earlier. It relates to the sales. It relates to the declining sales of certain things. And I'm just going to jump on our own bandwagon that we were a little bit controversial a year ago, speaking against the EV. And I'm just going to be yet another voice on that because things keep coming out that are clear indicators that we are barreling down the wrong path. You talked about Ford cutting Lightning production. They assigned a lot of that workforce back into ICE vehicles, internal combustion vehicles, and to things that are actually selling. And so the government is telling us one thing: you are going to build EVs, you are going to have that platform, and they're giving incentives for that. They're claiming an all EV world by some date in the future that thankfully keeps moving. And Steph, there's a graphic showing that even Tesla is having a bit of a down season here. They can't even cheapen their cars enough and give enough rebates for them to really spark sales. And when you do that, you see the GM of the 80s where rebates and discounts are not enough to spur the sales. And so, when you see the big manufacturers such as Ford come against it and looking more at hopefully toward hybrid vehicles, as Toyota has staunchly maintained, and there are no dummies running Toyota. And the Dan Edmonds in Car and Driver reported, he said a PHEV that is a plug-in powertrain represents extra cost and added weight because of the bigger battery. A lighter and cheaper standard hybrid is the better way to go in this case because the reduced weight of the hybrid typically results in better economy than an equivalent PHEV running on gasoline. And I think what we have here is a little line of a demarcation. And we don't throw a lot of politics in here, but policies are set by politicians, hence the root word. And we've got the Biden administration saying, you're going to do it, you're going to do it. And you've got entire manufacturers moving their platforms, their entire building models toward the EV, this mandate that's coming. And what's happened is that government mandates cannot force consumers or fix infrastructure. And so if we're going to have to bite off of this EV apple and be forced to eat it, then we need to right now change the way that all the guardrails are built. As Stefan mentioned in an earlier article, there's a graphic of that. The way every bridge is built and the weight that it can support, given the incredible weight disadvantage of an EV versus its equivalent gas-powered counterpart. Every single city's power grid and infrastructure is going to have to be rebuilt. Every fire department's extinguishing equipment, also a graphic there showing the intensely white-hot flame. We used to think white-hot was just a phrase. Well, these burn white-hot and cannot be extinguished in a normal way. And if you just imagine any of the accidents Stefan's talking about being between two EVs on an interstate, you're not just going to be mildly inconvenienced for 30 minutes. You're going to hope that the other cars in line don't catch you on fire before adequate equipment is brought there to bring the fire under control. So these are things people are not considering when they think that what they're going to do is clean up the rivers and add to the butterfly population because you're driving an EV. It is just not the case. And the last thing I want to say in my little rant is about basically the free enterprise system. If you're forcing EVs on all of us, causing platforms to change, all because of a government mandate, this is insanity because of what we call a free enterprise is our democracy. Telling people what you can make and telling people what they will buy is not a democracy. So in ending this, let Rivian, Lucid, Tesla, let the other manufacturers that already have an EV fingerprint in the world, and they're trying to push that, fine. Let them have their way. in strategic amounts that balance the totality of cars and trucks, but let sanity prevail in moderation, balance, and intelligent, underline that word, adoption that only the appetite and infrastructure can handle.
So I'm going to use some multi-syllable words here. I'm going to try to get them right. So, we are not anti-EV. I like EVs. I've driven them, but they are luxury items. They're your third car, your fourth car, because our infrastructure is not set up. So what has gone wrong? Governmental evangelicization of the automotive industry with the BEV that was going to save the world and our CO2 global warming. And if they would have let the industry progress naturally, which is what you have in our type economy, growth and demand, growth meets demand. If there's no infrastructure, there is no growth, and the demand will follow the growth. But this whole way of that this was going to save the world, and now we're seeing countries around the world backing off. And Toyota got it right from the beginning. They were stuck with their hybrids, and we're seeing now our automotive manufacturers in America are trying to come out with more hybrids, which is the bridge gap to a change in our infrastructure to support BEVs, which one day they'll be when we get the new battery. So you're right. It was we've ranted about it, and that's all I got to say. I'll quit there.
Well, one thing I'll point out, I really like that, Adams, and we talked about this, but it's worth revisiting because it does seem like we're headed down this road, and it's not a good road because there's two things that have to change. Obviously, you need to have more chargers, but how good is it really to have more chargers when instead of taking 4 minutes, which it takes to gas up your car with gasoline, now it takes 45 minutes, an hour, maybe 2 hours? How's that progress? And this is something that has been kind of gnawing at me for a while. And you didn't touch on this directly, but it's worth mentioning because it's exactly what we're talking about as far as the overall problems. Manufacturer after manufacturer has said basically this: we need to juice sales of the cars that make money. And for Ford and GM, and Ram, that's pickups and large SUVs. We need to juice the sales of those so we can make money that we need because it's so expensive to build these new cars that people don't want. So we got to sell GT3s, and we got to sell GT3 Tourings, and we got to sell Ferraris, we got to sell Ford F-150 Platinums and Ram Tungstens and Escalades. We got to sell as much as we can so we can make billions of dollars, and now we can start making the cars that people don't want.
And I think that ties in yesterday, that exactly what you said ties in yesterday. I took this 360 behind me out for coffee to meet a friend, and beautiful day down here at the beach. And this lady is sitting on a bench outside, a middle-aged lady, attractive lady. And I walk out to get in, and she goes, "Oh, is that yours?" And we talked about the car for a second. And I said, "Well, it's 20 years old." She goes, "Yeah." She goes, "I pegged that as a 2002. And I said, "Are you a car person?" She goes, "Yes." She goes, "I work for a major car manufacturer."
Wow.
And she said, "I have, against my better judgment, finally been talked into getting a Cadillac Lyric." And I said, "Oh, you're one of those 3 who actually bought one."
That's good.
But I admitted, I said, "It's a handsome car. You don't ever see them out." And she goes, "I know." She goes, "I wanted something a little bit different." And I said, "Well, where are you from?" She said, "Ohio." And she said, "I brought 6 children down here with me to the beach." I said, "You drove?" She said, "Yep." And I said, "Oh, you drove the Lyric? Why didn't you bring it?" She said, "No way I would do that. I calculated 6 hours and 30 minutes of recharge time on the way down." She said, "You try to do that with a carload of teenagers. I brought my Escalade."
There you go.
No.
Yep. That's like I said, that's why it is a luxury item to have as a third, fourth vehicle. If you live in the city commute, it'd be fabulous to be one of the people to own this new technology. But day-to-day living in the United States of America, for the average American, it's not feasible. Another thing is, the latest study showed it takes 25,000 miles before you recoup supposedly the carbon footprint. You have to drive your BEV 25,000 miles for it to be equal footprint with a ICE car.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you for your rant, Adams. And kind of funny that yesterday you ran into someone who bought a Lyric.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was hoping to get a car spotting out of the gig. I was going to get a twofer, but it didn't work.
I love that. That's also kind of encapsulates what we're talking about. I'm so excited. I got to talk to it. I got a Lyric. I'm so excited. Did you drive it? No, I'm not going to drive it. What are you, crazy? All right, so we're going to skip Mansory for this week. We'll put it off for a week because I do want to get to Mansory.
Okay.
But
Please show us one Mansory picture, just one vile picture of that.
Sure.
All right, here we go. It should be. Did it pop up? Let me try again.
Yeah.
All right.
But,
here it is. There it is.
There it is.
Oh.
And all
it's faded
tasteless
out.
glory.
The screen doesn't even.
Oh, wait a minute. There you go. But here we got to show an interior. Please stop. Okay.
All right. So introduce the next topic, or Stefan, because it's kind of a topic that's near and dear to your heart. And that is collector cars for a certain price.
So we've done our collector car. We start at 25, then 50, 7,500. Then we've done the CEO can get their car. We've done our price no limit car. And I said, let's just make it real. And it's back to that time when I bought my first collector car, when I bought my 60 Austin Healey bug-eyed Sprite. It was in my price range at the time, and I was a resident. I wasn't making a lot of money. It was active duty. So I said, let's do a $10,000 car. I think for a lot of people, that's, you just quit going to Starbucks every day. Spend your $7 on a cup of Joe, add that up, and you'll have $10,000 pretty quick. So $10,000 is reasonable. So I said, let's do something in the 10,000 range. And I'm not gonna lie, Steve was like, I don't do that, but we're doing it. Okay. So we're doing it. Since I said we're going to do it, I'm going to go first. Because I got to find Steve-O's picture. He just had to step up. So my first choice, I say I'm going to start with the one I thought about, but why I did not get. So this is a 1966 Citroen Deschevaux. So this is the Coccinelle. It's the French version of the Beetle.
You need to separate those words, "de" and "chevaux" when you say that. If you don't mind, it's the way it comes out.
I will have one of these one day, but this would be too uncool, unique, way out there to have as your first and only collector car. So this is a car that you add to a collection because you have an emotional attachment to, but it's just not. It's hip, yes, but it's not cool. So you got to have something cool for your first collector car. So for me, for 10 grand, here's what I've got. Triumph TR6.
Oh, man. Great.
And there's so many reasons this is so cool. This is a British Roadster, which I think the idea of owning a British Roadster convertible appeals to people. This had a cam tail, which is kind of like a cut-off straight tail, which is very cool. And Adams, you're the guru collector dude, but I think the appeal of the TR6 to many people, am I not wrong here? This is the very first car that we can say actually came with oversized tires that filled up the wheel wells. And to me, that's one of the appeals of this car. This is a car that had tires that looked proportioned and right sized. Everything else up to this time, the tires always looked too small. Now we got 20 and 21.
You got a photo of that lovely thing? Because if you don't, I've got a
Oh,
couple.
I'm sorry. I thought I had screen share up. Let me go back.
In discussing that car and its wheel. Oh, there you go.
There it is.
There we go.
Yeah.
So let me see a good picture of the wheels. So the car looked proportionately in my mind, and it's just a very appealing design.
Well, that was a car that was, based back on the TR4, which was a 4-cylinder car, and then the TR4A, which had the first independent rear suspension. All the other Brit cars today just had a live rear axle, and some of them those goofy lever shocks. But Triumph kind of popped out there with a little bit of engineering breakthrough with the rear suspension. It wasn't the greatest independent rear, but nobody cares. But the profile of that car is what gave it such a manly look to me, and it was a a very British design that they called Michelotti in to soften up, quite Italian designer of the day, quite, in and sort of happening. And then the Germans who cut that tail off. When you talk about the cam tail, the KAMM tail, not the CAM like shaft, but cut the tail off and just really, I don't know, just sort of beefed up that car's look. It just had a stance about it. And Steph, you mentioned the wheels, and most of them came equipped with Michelin red line tires, which even looked kind of cooler. That was sort of the signature of the TR6, was the Michelin red line.
Yes.
I just love that car. I had one in this garage here for about 2 years, sort of a COVID project of mine that I really enjoyed. It's the most fun you can have for 10 grand right there.
All right. So that's my pick. All right. Well, Steve-O, let's go to Adam's. Then I'm going to pull up Steve's
No, I got to go next because I have to leave.
Oh, you got to leave. All right.
Yeah, I have to leave. So just at NA Miata. So you can get a really good first generation Miata for less than $10,000. And I'll let you pull out the pictures. But I would want something for the same reason that they made the Miata. I don't want a TR6 or an MG Midget or something, because I want it to run. I don't want to work on it. So
wow.
First generation.
Where's your sense of adventure?
To be fair, Stefan knows what he's doing. He's worked on these cars. He knows how to fix them.
They're super easy to work on.
I get a Miata, and I'd be happy. And that's it.
I have one in my garage. It's a fantastic. I'll never sell that car because I can't imagine. I paid 10 grand for mine at the time. I can't imagine getting more car for 10 grand. That is zero. It's not going to be like my TR6 that the Lucas electronics are going to spontaneously combust while I'm asleep at night. I mean, I had that Austin Healey, and it was constant. It just broke by itself. It
knew you didn't trust it.
Yes. So that was a great pick from Steve-O. I've got the second generation Miata, the second one. All right, so let's move on here. Adams, you ready for yours?
In a shocking development.
Oh my God, I cannot believe this. So describe this to our listeners. This is unbelievable.
Well, first, listeners, before I describe this to them, I had actually strongly considered a first generation Boxster. I don't know if you could get an S for under 10 grand, but you can get a standard one for under 10 grand.
Fabulous car.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't call it collector yet, but fabulous car.
I agree. It's sort of holding steady. I looked at the 914 2-liter, although the better of those, I mean, you'd have to get kind of a project. You could actually get a Porsche 928 for around 10 grand if you found a guy who just paid his last repair bill and was about to just jump off a bridge.
But you ended up parking that thing on the side of the road and just walk. When the day it broke down on you, you would just walk away and it'd have an orange sticker on it the next day, and it'd be there forever.
Exactly.
You couldn't afford to fix it.
Exactly. So, that's the kind of car that when it breaks, you start to dream at night. You think, what are the penalties for insurance fraud? Because you're all I got to do is burn it or sink it. However, in a radical departure, I chose the Mazda B2000, which was a small pickup truck that just had all you needed and nothing you didn't. It was a single cab truck back when that's what everybody had, was a single cab truck. And it had a little, you could get them earlier with the Mazda rotary. I believe this is just your normal piston engine here. But it's a great looking truck to me, very lightweight. You can treat it like a truck. It'll drive forever. You could actually travel with it. You could carry stuff. You can get a camper shell to put on the back.
He's lying to you, listeners, because the one he picked at auction has a airless suspension system. It's been slammed and it's got these giant tires. So he's lying to you about what he said he'd buy.
You got it. Well, does that lead picture look pretty good or what?
Dude, this thing sold for $6,600 at auction.
Yep.
So think about it. Somebody's going to spend 20 grand on some four-wheeler that they're going to, cruise around for $6,600. This thing has got a almost like a, what do you call it? An Etna Blue, maybe? Porsche Etna
Yeah,
Blue?
yeah, I'm digging the blue.
I'm
And
digging the blue. It's got tinted windows. It's got some oversized rims. It's slammed a little bit. It's got a gorgeous pinstripe. Th- This
and you
is
got
this
about
is
$3,000 left over to go have fun with it.
yeah.
You know, if you want to rip the slammer suspension off of it, you can. If you want to buy that camper shell, or maybe buy the four-wheeler and the ramps to go with it, and then for your full 10 grand, you've got an all-activity vehicle.
This thing has a bed liner. I mean, this thing is, dude, you found it. Oh, look at the it's got the coffee can exhaust on it.
Like, what else would you want? And I
This
think
thing
you
has
could go
been
over.
gorgeously maintained.
Yeah, it is. You could go over maybe 2 railroad tracks before the rear fender well cut a slice off your tires. But yeah, you'd have to sort of drive a little carefully. But I just loved it.
Oh, and it's got the cargo net in the back and the truck bed as well. Oh, dude, this thing is awesome. I love it.
I'm glad you approve.
I would have seriously, when I saw this come, I'm like, this is Steve-O's pick, you know. And yeah, great choice. So I think, you know, the point here is, you know, we all think collector cars and we're thinking fancy Porsches, Ferraris. There is stuff in the $5,000 to $10,000 range that you can have a blast in. You can learn to become a shade tree mechanic. I mean, I changed the clutch slave cylinder on my Miata a couple weeks ago, and it took me literally longer to jack the car up and put jack stands underneath it than to reach underneath there and change the clutch cylinder. So you can get these, especially these year's vehicles. There's not a lot of smog stuff on them. Great fun, great way to learn to turn a wrench. There is a huge community, especially if you go JDM, a Japanese car like the Miata, like this. You're going to find a huge community support in helping you, or an old Mustang 5-liter Mustang. Same thing,
Yep.
a Fox body Mustang.
Yep.
Find a car that there's a community of people that love these things, and they will be doing labor for free for you, helping you, teach you how to work on these. So I think
you're right. I think, Steph, you said a lot, because you get more almost in this price range, because you do have a community of like-minded enthusiasts, or people who say, yeah, I kind of want to do that one day myself. And if those of you out here are going, no, for 10 grand, you know, I don't want to have to cheap around and, you know, have to do my own oil changes. None of this is a have to. It's actually fun to. And if you think getting your hands dirty, you know, you could think of 1,000 things more fun. Honestly, it's a little bit the sense of accomplishment. It's a sense of learning something. It's a sense of being more familiar with it if it does break down on the road, because unlike most modern cars, which normal people cannot fix, even the mechanically competent cannot do roadside repairs in a modern car. But in one of these, you'd be amazed at what you can do way beyond just changing the tire or jumping it off. They're actually fun and rewarding to work on.
And winner chicken dinner goes to Adam's husband, because I guarantee you, think about it, listeners, you've got a Miata, a TR6, and this gorgeous blue B2000 that's a little bit slammed with the air suspension, shows up at a Cars and Coffee. Men over the age of 60 are going to go to the TR6. Men 40 to 60 will take a look at the Miata. Everybody else, Adams, is going to come to this truck of yours. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. From the 5-year-old kid to the 16-year-old guy to a 28-year-old guy, they're going to love this B2000. Awesome pick. And it came in low. What did this thing sell for? Go back
like
to the top.
$6,700.
$6,700.
There you go.
There you go, listeners. So you can have fun for $6,600. Drop that cup of Joe at Starbucks, and in a year you'll have saved up enough money for this.
And I think all of them are probably going to appreciate you.
Yes. All right, well, another fun show. Steve-O had to drop out to meetings. So remember to like, listen, subscribe. Check that bell button they tell me apparently on YouTube. I'm not that advanced. But we'll see you next week.